Lawyers, Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin are present. Mr. Miata, Mr. Milius, Mr. Balian, and Mr. Lewin are present. Mr. Lewin, you may continue your cross-examination.
Mr. Durst, there's one question I forgot to ask you about with respect to the struggle allegedly between you and your wife over the keys. Do you recall that area of questioning?
Yeah.
So when you had the struggle, oh, I forgot again. When you had the struggle over the keys,
Objection to Sisyphean task.
I'm sorry?
I said, is there such an objection as Sisyphean?
Sisyphean.
Sisypheus was the guy that kept rolling the boulder up the hill and kept rolling back on it.
That's Sisyphus. Yes, I'm familiar with Sisyphus, and no, that's overruled. Thank you.
can you object with TV shows, something sports related? That is, this literature is not, I got to phone a friend. It's not my thing. All right, Mr. Durst.
Moby Dick.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I got the. I knew who wrote it, but that was it. I didn't even know who won.
Yeah.
You had to tell me. Mr. Durst, I want to go back for a second, and I want to ask you about the keys. Once you had the struggle, you got control of the keys, correct?
Correct.
So if you had the keys at that point, why did you have to go disable the battery cable if you had the keys?
We had more than one set of keys.
Kind of like, that sounds a lot like Morris Black, doesn't it?
No.
Not a question.
It's a question.
It's a vague question.
Well, Mr. Durst, haven't you also testified that after you took the keys away from Morris Black, he apparently had another set of keys, and that's how he got back into the house? Isn't that we're going to get there, trust me, but isn't that the same thing you said about Morris Black?
No.
So, Mr. Durst, if Kathy had her own set of keys, why did she have to ask you for them? Couldn't she just have taken the car and gone home?
We used to keep one set of keys in the car, and we each had a set of car keys with our other keys.
So,
I did not have my car keys with me, so I had to get the keys away from Kathy.
so let me understand this. So there's a set of keys in the car, and there's a set of keys that are in her coat. Is that right?
The key that were in the car, she had put in the coat.
So if Kathy wanted to go home and she gets in an argument with you about going home, why does she go back to South Salem at all? Why don't you just drive the car, which she has control over, you're not in it, why don't you just drive it back to New York? Why stop home at all?
She had left her belongings in South Salem.
What belongings?
She had taken a small case from Riverside Drive Friday night when we drove up.
Well, Mr. Durst, are you saying that she didn't have other clothes and other items? She could have just gone home, correct?
She wanted to get the things that she had brought with her.
How do you know that?
That's what she was doing.
So you're saying that she came home, there's either an argument or no argument, but then you're aware that she wants to go get a case. What was in that case?
She had worn sweatpants and a sweatshirt to Gilberta's house. She did not want to go back to the city wearing that.
Wait. She doesn't want to go back to the city wearing the clothing she was wearing at Gilberta's. Couldn't she just go home and change her clothes?
I guess she could have, but that's not what she did.
Well, Mr. Durst, is this maybe one of those things that you didn't quite think out before you said it?
2 minutes and stop. Go on with the question.
You know, what was the objection?
I don't know, I don't like the question either. Pick at everyone. Let's go to
All right.
a different area.
All right. Mr. Durst, are you making this thing up as you go along?
I'm remembering what happened.
Would you agree, Mr. Durst, that your memory could be characterized as evolving? Is that a fair statement?
I don't know what an evolving memory is.
A memory that changes over time depending upon, in this situation, what is in your best interest. That's what I mean by evolving memory, to make my question clear. Is that what you're
You
doing?
want me to answer that?
Yes?
The answer's no.
All right. The lie about having drinks with the mayors, that wasn't the only lie you told about what happened that night, was it?
I told Mike Stroke 2 lies that night. That was one of them.
The second lie was that Kathy made it home and you had a conversation. You had a conversation with her between 11 and 11:15 p.m. Is that correct?
Correct.
You also added a fact that she was watching the news, correct?
Correct.
That's one of those facts that you just added. Was a detail, kind of a extra vivid detail of what happened that you're now saying is an absolute, complete, and utter lie, correct?
Correct.
So you would agree, Mr. Durst, going back to my prior question, that just because you give a lot of details in the stories you tell, don't make them true, correct?
What I'm saying is true. The details, what I remember.
Well, no, you just said, Mr. Durst, that that was completely untrue and that the details were fabricated. Correct? That's what you just said.
Correct.
So, Mr. Durst, you've also said when I asked you, you've said and agreed that previously you have made the statement, I lie a lot, but nobody ever said that I was good at it. That's something you said, correct?
Sounds like something I would say to Andrew.
Wait a minute. Does that mean you're going to tell us that's one that Andrew made you say or tipped you to say, or is that actually something you said because that's what you believe to be true?
Something I said to Andrew because I thought that's what he wanted to hear.
Well, would you agree, though, that it's actually true? I'll break it up. You do tell a lot of lies, don't you?
No.
Well, I can't ask you the second part then. Okay. Let me continue. Can you tell me why Kathy would have gone back to the Riverside Drive penthouse the night she disappeared? Why Riverside Drive and not East 86th Street?
She was living at Riverside Drive. She was not living at 86th Street.
Well, I just want to ask you, you agree that Karen Minatello said she was living in East 86th Street, correct?
I don't think Karen Minutello said that. I think Karen Minutello said she got a telephone call from Kathy saying she wanted to rent a smaller apartment.
Do you
I
recall?
don't think Karen Minutello knew where Kathy was calling from.
Do you recall Karen Minatello saying that Kathy was staying in a 2-bedroom apartment at East 86th Street, but that she wanted to sublet that, and in fact, to go and get a smaller apartment? Do you recall that testimony from Karen Minatello?
I do. It made as much sense as the rest of her testimony that I was stealing bicycles.
All right, so you just said a moment ago Karen Minatello never said that. Now you're saying Karen Minatello said it, but it wasn't true. Which is it?
I don't think Karen Minutello said that Kathy was living at 86th Street.
Okay, so Mr. Durst, would you agree that East 86th Street is substantially closer to Jacoby, where she needed to do her ambulatory peds rotation on Monday?
If you looked at a map, you would see that Jacoby was 10 or 12 miles from Riverside Drive and probably 9 or 11 miles from East 86th Street. Either way, you had to drive or take a taxi.
So, would you also agree, Mr. Durst, that going from Westchester, the way the trains work and the way public transit works, is it's much quicker to go from your place in South Salem to East 86th Street than it was to go up to the Upper West Side on Riverside Drive?
From South Salem to East 86th Street would take about an hour. From South Salem to Riverside Drive would also take about an hour.
So you're saying that it takes the same amount of time by public transportation to go from Westchester, South Salem, to Riverside Drive as it does to go from South Salem to East 86th Street?
Correct.
Okay, let's move on. Do you believe that in any way it was your responsibility to help find your missing wife?
Yes.
And you agree that's what any husband would do if their wife turned up missing, right? If they didn't kill her. Let me add that proviso. Let me restate
Do
the
you want
question.
me to answer the question?
No, I want to withdraw my question and ask it better. Would you agree that any husband whose wife was missing, if they did not kill that wife, would certainly want to help find their missing wife?
I would agree.
However, that's not what you told Andrew Jarecki during your December 12, 2010 interview, is it?
I don't remember what I told Andrew Jarecki.
Okay. RD 095 12 page 451, lines 9 through 20.
And Your Honor, this is from People's 269, page 64 of the transcript.
Thank you.
The reporter missing, it's their problem. Put her on the train, she came to the city, I don't know where she is, she's not going to medical school. There's gotta be something wrong.
Now, it was going to become their problem to figure out what the
Yes, the
truth
police
was.
look for missing persons, what am I supposed to do?
Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah, I hear it.
Did you say it?
I said it.
Wait, is this another Andrew Jarecki told you to say this?
No. had no idea how I could be helpful. That's why I went to the police.
So why would you actually say, Mr. Durst, it's their problem, referring to the police, about your missing wife?
I don't know, I said it.
Well, think about it. I'll wait.
I should think about it.
Yeah, think about why you said it. I'll wait.
Why would I say it?
Why would you say it?
Do I have a question?
Why would you say, Mr. Durst, it's their problem regarding your missing wife?
I don't know.
So you're saying as you sit here, you have no explanation as to why you would have said that. Is that correct?
It's something I say.
Well, clearly it's something you said, Mr. Durst. We heard it. I'm asking you, why did you say it?
I think I answered you and I don't know. I said it.
Do you think that sounds like, in any way, forget about a supportive husband, the way any husband would talk about his missing wife?
It's their problem. It was their problem. There was nothing I could possibly do.
You also said she's not going to medical school. But you agree, Mr. Durst, you've seen the rotations, you've seen the reports. She was going to medical school, correct?
She was not at medical school Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And I know that because there was a call to the answering machine at Riverside Drive from a lady who said, Kathy Durst needs to contact such and such a person right away because she has missed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Oh, so what, okay.
Where is she supposed to be?
So what you meant by that was she's not going to medical school. You just meant between when she became missing. You weren't referring to before that. Is that correct? That's my error. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
She wasn't in medical school Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. That's why I called the precinct on Thursday.
Right, but when you're saying she's not going to medical school, you were only referring to that week. That's what you meant by that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's my error. Let me ask you, do you agree that at the time that she disappeared, that basically in your comments to the police, the comments to the media, that you basically blamed her for her own disappearance?
I don't remember any comments I made to the media.
Did you tell Detective Struck on February 8th that you thought Kathy's disappearance was related to drugs?
Probably I did, and probably I did.
Did you tell the New York Post on June 3rd, 1982, that Kathy had a cocaine problem and that the bad elements she met and associated with her drug use were likely responsible for her disappearance?
So this is on June 3rd of 1982, and now she's been missing for 5 months. I did think that whatever was going on probably had to do with cocaine.
And by the way, you said you believed that then, correct? Is that right? You believed that her disappearance related to cocaine, correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that now?
Do I think that now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You told the New York Post on February 9th, 1982, that Kathy drove a flashy red Mercedes-Benz, wore expensive diamond earrings, expensive clothing, and drew attention to herself, and that these factors could have led to her disappearance. You said that, correct?
I have no idea.
Put it up, please.
Your Honor, can we call this, people's, I believe it's 305. 306.
Mr. Durst, you do enjoy talking to the media, don't you? You enjoy it, right?
Is there a pending question?
No,
Oh. And why is that up there?
because I'm going to ask a question in a moment. Next question I'm asking is, do you
No, I do not enjoy talking to the media.
do you enjoy, Mr. Durst, reading about yourself in the media?
I do not.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you ask nearly every person that you talk to, even to this day, to send you clips? What reporters are there? What articles are out on you? Don't you do that with your friends constantly?
No. No to both questions.
Well, you heard Susan Giordano's testimony, and you heard jail call clips, Mr. Durst, where you were discussing and asking about articles on yourself. You heard Emily Altman's testimony. Are you saying that you do not ask your friends to send you media clips, articles?
No.
All right, let's look at the upper left corner. New York Post, February 9th. Durst said his wife drove a flashy red Mercedes and wore expensive clothing and diamond earrings. She drew attention to herself, he said. Did you say that?
I see it there.
Did you say it?
I said it.
February 10th. Kathy had consumed an entire bottle of wine while she was in South Salem. Did that come from you or no?
Which one am I looking at?
February 10th, 1982, the bottom left. Is that something you said?
I did not say that.
June 3rd, 1982, he suggested his wife ran away because she suffered some sort of quasi-breakdown. Kathy was doing badly in medical school, and she was doing badly in our life. She was unhappy. Did you say that?
I did.
That doesn't even involve cocaine, correct? Nothing about cocaine on that one, right? Correct?
That does not involve cocaine.
What kind of quasi-breakdown? What does that mean?
Quasi breakdown. I guess I think he means sort of a breakdown, kind of a breakdown,
And
like a breakdown.
what kind of breakdown are you referring to that she had? Where does that statement come from? What do you base it on?
I think that's pretty similar to what Dr. Wadlingham said.
That Kathy was having a sort of... Dr. Watlington said that you were basically abusing her, Mr. Durst, and that she was very concerned and worried about Kathy. Is it your testimony that she mentioned that Kathy was suffering some sort of quasi-breakdown? Is that your testimony?
My testimony is the last part of it, that Dr. Wallingham said that Kathy had a nervous breakdown.
So you also said she was doing badly in medical school, but you agree, having looked at the medical records, that simply was not true, correct?
I think very few of those students had to redo 3 clerkships like Kathy did. I was not aware at that time that she had passed 2 of them.
How many of those students do you think, Mr. Durst, were being emotionally and violently abused by their husbands while they went through the difficult experience of medical school? Do you think that was a common occurrence for Kathy, for her classmates? Or do you think she was more unique in that situation?
I think this is about 11 questions.
Let me break it down for you. Fair enough. Mr. Durst, do you think that Kathy's fellow students were likely being emotionally and physically abused to the same extent that she was?
My wife was not being emotionally and physically abused.
So there was no physical and emotional abuse by you at all of Kathy's?
Correct.
Okay, and all of the incidents that we've discussed that you've admitted to, let's just go through a few of them. The Christmas incident, the throwing the bottle of soda at her, the statement that your life had basically become a bunch of fights, pushing, shoving arguments, your statements in front of her mother about your penis, that none of that constitutes, in your opinion, physical or emotional abuse?
Correct.
I'll overrule that.
When you said she was doing badly in our life, what does that mean?
I mean, we had divorce lawyers.
I thought you said you weren't getting a divorce.
We were trying not to get divorced, but we talked about it periodically, and each of us had had affairs.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because you've literally said on 5 different occasions now, we were not getting a divorce, we were getting a divorce. We were not getting a divorce, we were getting a divorce. If I can ask you right now, well, Your Honor, it's
inexact.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Inexact, so I'll sustain the objection.
Mr. Durst, do you agree that during your testimony, you've gone back and forth like a ping pong ball regarding whether or not you and your wife were getting a divorce?
Objection. Follow the question.
It's an argument. The lack of ping pong
Was that
ball.
sustained?
I will sustain it.
Okay, Mr. Durst, do you agree that you have gone back and forth in your answers regarding whether or not you and your wife were getting a divorce?
Well, quite clearly, you don't have to be a matrimonial lawyer to know that it does not take a year and a half to get divorced. We had matrimonial lawyers for a year and a half, and neither of us ever filed for divorce. I had moved out of 12 East 86th Street at Kathy's request, and then about 6 or 9 months later, the two of us bought an apartment in Riverside Drive and moved there. So yes, some days it seemed like we were going to get divorced, and then the next day it would seem like we're not going to get divorced. People who are getting divorced don't buy co-ops.
And people who are staying married, correct, Mr. Durst, don't have affairs with Prudence Farrow, correct?
Well, I guess they don't all have affairs with Prudence Farrow.
So, Mr. Durst, you also said on June 3rd, 1982, Kathy had become, whatever word you want to use, she did cocaine. Now, by the way, Mr. Durst, you've already said that Kathy had gone to rehab and was using less cocaine. Wouldn't that have been the time, Mr. Durst, to have said to the paper, hey, listen, my wife was in cocaine rehab at Lenox Hill Hospital and was doing better. How come you didn't mention that?
Oh, first, it was none of my business.
Wait, it's none of your business? Please explain that.
Kathy was not telling people that she was in some kind of drug rehab. As far as I was concerned, it was something she wanted to keep to herself.
So you're telling the press repeatedly that in essence, your missing wife is a cocaine addict, and that's why she disappeared, and you're gonna stand here and tell us that actually you were trying to protect her reputation? Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that I did not see what the fact that she was in drug rehab had to do with any of the questions I was asked.
All right, let me move on.
Before he moves on, Your Honor,
Yes?
Peoples 308 on the screen. Based on the testimony, may we redact the bottom left portion from his doc? That's the one he didn't acknowledge.
Right.
Page
Yes.
6. 306. Oh, they wanted
He was
to
asked questions about the, he was asked specific questions. How,
Do you stipulate to the omission of 308 as is?
Yeah, we don't have any issue.
Those-
I know you don't, but you don't necessarily have a basis unless you agree to let it in. There were questions about that, but he doesn't acknowledge it, so,
They want it, we'll stipulate.
okay, that's fine.
Okay.
It's 306.
so that
306, 306.
You know, the jury can consider the answer with the actual exhibit.
That's fine.
That's fine.
You told Charlie Lackman on February 9th, 1982, that Kathy was, quote, scared of the city, unquote, correct?
I don't remember saying that, and I never felt that Kathy was scared of the city.
Well, you heard Mr. Lackman's testimony. You agree that's what he testified that you said, correct?
I don't remember his testimony.
I want you to assume that Mr. Lackman said that you told him that on February 9th, 1982. If you in fact had said it, Mr. Durst, would you be able to explain why you said it?
That she's scared of the city?
Yes.
We lived in the city. How could you be scared of the city?
Well, I didn't say it, Mr. Durst. You did.
Well, I'm saying I didn't say it.
Okay, so you're not saying now that you said it in error or that you disagree with it. You're saying, I never told him that.
Correct.
Are you aware of any reason why Mr. Lackman would come in here and say that you made a comment like that if you didn't? Is there any issue that you had with him, any motivation that you know of?
I don't know why he would, but he's taking it out of context.
Well, wait a minute. If he takes it out of context, that means you had to have said it, correct?
I'm not agreeing that I said she was scared of the city.
So what did you mean by it had to be taken out of context? Is that like kill them all, of course, or there it is, you're caught?
If he said it, he was taking it out of context.
I think it's argument.
Call the question.
Sustained.
Mr. Durst, is it your testimony that Susan Berman did not call Dean Cooperman pretending to be Kathy?
That is my testimony.
If Susan Berman if you had had her call with that phony alibi, would you tell us?
Excuse me, that's the improper hypothetical question.
Rephrase it.
Mr. Durst, if in fact you had had Susan Berman call Dean Cooperman pretending to be Kathy, would you tell us?
Same question, objection,
Overruled, different question.
same false premise that he's denied.
You know, that's a speaking objection. I have been objecting to the speaking objections, but
That's
I'm
all
trying
right.
to follow the court
I'll
rules.
overrule it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You repeat the question.
If you had had Susan call Dean Cooperman and asked her to pretend to be Kathy Durst, would you tell us?
Susan Berman never called Albert Einstein or Dr. Cooperman pretending to be Kathy Durst.
Objection, non-responsive, motion to strike.
I'll allow it.
Mr. Durst, listen to my question. It's not what I asked you. Listen to my question. If.
You're arguing with the answer.
No,
I object to the point.
he didn't answer the question I asked, Your Honor.
Well, that's true. Just a moment.
What is your question?
Just a moment.
Dick DeGuerin is standing up. He doesn't like
Wait,
your
the judge is
question.
about to lose.
I don't think he likes any of my questions, but.
That's,
Hi, John.
overruled. May answer.
Can I give a short narrative explaining why Susan Berman could not have called Albert Einstein?
It's not my
That's
question.
not the question that is pending, but on a redirect examination, your lawyer might ask you that question. This is merely how you would testify about such a thing.
Mr. Durst, let me ask the question again. If you had had Susan Berman call Dr. Cooperman pretending to be Kathy, would you admit to it?
I did not have Susan Berman call Dr. Cooperman, and Susan Berman.
Motion to
could
strike
not-
non-responsive?
Responsible.
I'll allow it to stand and move to the next question. The jury can draw whatever conclusion they want.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask the court to ask Mr. Durst. I want the court to make a finding. He is deliberately not answering my question. He
No,
understands
he's
it.
not answering your question.
Mr. Durst, do you understand the question that I'm asking?
Yes,
And are you going to answer, or are you just going to refuse to answer it?
your question is based on a wrong premise.
Mr. Durst, so
Susan Berman could not have gotten away with calling Dr. Cooperman.
Mr. Durst, are you going to answer the question I asked or not?
No.
Okay. Mr. Durst, are you aware that your decision not to answer a question is something that can be used against you in argument? Do you understand that?
That's argument.
That's not argument.
No, that's overruled. You can argue it. The defense can argue it wasn't a fair question, so he refused to answer it. You can argue it was a fair question, he should have answered it. It's not really the most important argument, but you can argue it.
Do you understand that, Mr. Durst?
Yeah, but I'm having a problem with my tablet. Deputy,
The
I'm
screen.
getting something on my tablet.
I think it's a battery message.
Says the battery is running low and I cannot read it.
One moment, she'll fix that for you, I think.
I fixed it.
Ah, I think he tapped the OK. Yeah, battery low, OK, got it.
Okay, Mr. Durst,
I'm gonna switch it out either way.
You want to switch it out?
Yes.
Okay, it's going to give out soon, so.
may I continue, Your Honor?
Yeah,
Mr. Durst, I just want to make sure you understand the question I'm answering. You have just decided.
question you're asking.
What did I say?
Answer the question I'm answering.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Durst, you understand the question. That was a good one, Mr. Chesnut. You understand the question that I'm asking. You are just refusing to answer it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, let me move on. Can you explain, Mr. Durst, why Kathy would not have called the rotation she was supposed to be reporting to?
Kathy knew that Dr. Cooperman was expecting her to telephone him.
Motion to strike, non-responsive.
Hold on. Calm down. Explain. Why?
My question was
you-
not about Dr. Cooperman.
Wait a second. Why Kathy would not have called the rotation? So it's an implicit, it implicitly answers the question. So, overruled. You may ask it a different way.
Mr. Durst, listen to my question, please. I'm not asking you about Kathy calling Dr. Cooperman. I'm asking you, can you explain why Kathy would not have called the rotation that she was due to be at 9 a.m. Monday morning?
Because she chose to call Dr. Cooperman.
Have you heard the testimony and the stipulation from approximately 20 of her classmates regarding the issue of who would have to be called if someone were sick? Did you hear that testimony?
I remember.
Mistakes in testimony.
Were there 20? There were,
Proxy-
there were,
No, no,
there were a
it's
number.
not but mistakes.
I'm sorry?
Mistakes in testimony. He said that who should be called, rather than what they said, who they would call.
No, that does not misstate the testimony.
Who would have to be called if someone were sick? It sounds correct to me.
Mr. DeGuerin is saying, Your Honor, that the distinction would be between who should be called rather than who would be called. And we covered both with these witnesses.
I think so too. Overruled.
Mr. Durst, do you understand my question?
Yes.
You heard
Called
from,
up.
go ahead. You heard from approximately 20 of Kathy's classmates and other doctors who all said that Kathy, any medical student, would have absolutely called the rotation that she was supposed to be scheduled to start. You heard that testimony, correct?
I did.
Do you have any extra knowledge that you're aware of that those doctors and medical school students do not have about that issue?
Those doctors and medical students were not aware that Kathy had a relationship with Dr. Cook, and that Dr. Cook had told Dr. Cooperman to expect a telephone call from Kathy Durst.
So,
And as a result, Kathy Durst called Dr. Cooperman.
do you understand, did you hear the witnesses testify, Mr. Durst, that even if Kathy would have called, for some unknown reason, an associate dean at the medical school rather than someone at the hospital, that all of those witnesses testified, every one of them, that she would have called the service she was supposed to report to?
Mistakes the evidence, Your Honor.
Overruled.
As to the reason for the call.
It does not. You must answer the question.
She called Dr. Cooperman because she thought Dr. Cooperman was the correct person to call. And there was a stipulation done not that long ago in which it was agreed by the parties that the doctors were not familiar with the relationship that Kathy Durst had with Dr. Cook.
Let's please read the stipulation, Mr. Balian.
And the exhibit number for the stipulation.
While you're bringing that up, I'll ask another question, so we save time. Is that okay with the court, Your Honor?
Yes?
Mr. Durst, are you aware that there were no calls on February 1st, 1982 from the Riverside Drive penthouse? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Mr. Durst, you heard testimony from the phone expert, and you've seen the phone records, and would you agree that the testimony was that there was no phone calls on February 1st, 1982 from the Riverside Drive penthouse?
I don't recall that, but I will accept it.
Okay, so, Mr. Durst, you're telling me that you do not remember testimony in this case about whether or not there were calls from the Riverside Drive penthouse on February 1st. You have forgotten that testimony.
Objection, misstates testimony. No record of long-distance calls.
That is,
He says he doesn't remember, but he accepts it.
all right, Mr. Durst, can you explain, there was,
Your objection to overruled.
there was,
There's no record. No record, is that what you're
No
saying?
record of long-distance calls.
that's,
R-
you know, that's a,
No
it's a
record
speaking
of
objection,
phone
it's
calls.
wrong
Okay,
factually.
just wait. You may clear that up if you think that's wrong. You can your client has accepted that that is true. You may,
But it misstates the record.
Does not misstate the record, Your Honor.
all right,
No
well,
record of toll calls, that's the record. That's what's in the record.
The question was,
No record of toll
the
calls.
question was there any record of any phone call placed on February 1st, 1982 from Riverside Drive?
Right,
The
that's
answer is no.
right, that's right. Overruled. That's overruled.
But the testimony was no record of toll.
You know, that sounds like, you know, that's,
Mr. DeGuerin, you're trying to make an argument to the jury. I've overruled your objection. You're not correct. The evidence is there is no record of call. That's the record.
Good. May we have a sidebar?
No. You can have,
This is very important.
we can talk in 5 minutes, but we're not taking time from the jury right now. Please be seated.
Go to the next one.
do we have it or no?
We have it. Okay.
You have them both?
No, the stipulation is what.
Okay, stipulation.
Yeah, we have it. It's People's 47.
Okay.
Stipulation number, was it 60? I think it was 60. I think it was stipulation number 60. You want me to read the whole thing?
Please.
The parties stipulate to the following. The following medical doctors were affiliated with Albert Einstein Medical School in 1982. Dr. Stephen Baum, I'll give you all the spellings later. Dr. Edward Burns, Dr. Irene Cohen, Dr. Yukiko Kimura, Dr. Robert McClintock, Dr. Michael McMillan, Dr. Valerie Overton, Dr. Phil Padden, Dr. Mary Paras, and Dr. Elizabeth Cerna Baum. If called, each of these doctors would testify to the following. It was extremely rare for a medical student to call in sick, and the level of illness to do so would have to have been extremely severe. If a medical student was going to be ill, they would have called someone on the service at the hospital rotation they were scheduled to work at, and not a dean at the medical school. If a medical student were to call in sick to a dean, the witnesses would expect that the medical student would also have called into the rotation they were due to report to. If a medical student was going to call in sick to a rotation, they would do so well before the time that rotation was supposed to start. Calling in sick for the first day of a rotation was even more unprecedented. If a student were interested in potentially applying to be a resident at the rotation they were scheduled to show up at, they would have an even greater incentive not to call in sick in an effort to impress that service so that they could potentially match with and secure a residency there. None of the above named witnesses had any knowledge of the relationship between Kathy Durst and Dean Jean Cook. None of the above named witnesses had any personal relationship with Dean Jean Cook. Each of the above named witnesses would have responded that the following hypothetical is inconsistent with their experience as medical students and physicians. Quote, a fourth-year medical student about to graduate is said to have called in sick to the first day of a rotation with complaints of a headache, diarrhea, and cramps. The call is made not to the rotation itself or the hospital where the rotation is taking place, but instead to a dean at the medical school. The call is made either at the time the student was due to be at the rotation or up to 2 hours thereafter. The rotation was on a service where the medical school was interested in applying to for their residency, end quote.
Medical school or medical student?
Medical student was interested in applying to for their residency.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Durst, you understand your attorneys stipulated to what was just read. Did you hear it?
I understand that was just read. Said that the doctors had no knowledge about the relationship between Kathy Durst and Dr. Cook.
Did you hear each of those medical students, Mr. Durst, would have testified that, number one, it would have been highly irregular for somebody to call the dean. That two, even if they had called the dean, they absolutely would have called the service. In addition, they were given the hypothetical of what Kathy Durst allegedly did on February 1st, and none of them found that to be in any way consistent with their experience. Do you agree that is what that stipulation says?
The stipulation also says that none of those doctors knew anything about the relationship between Kathy Durst and Dr. Cook.
So your position is, Mr. Durst, that apparently after Kathy Durst called Dr. Cooperman was then, as an associate dean, supposed to call the service Kathy was supposed to be working on and say, hey, listen, this is Dean Cooperman. Kathy can't make it today. Is that your testimony?
You've changed my testimony.
How?
My testimony is what I said. It's right there in black and white in the stipulation. None of the doctors knew anything about the relationship between Kathy Durst and Dr. Cook.
Listen to my questions, my last question of the day. Listen, Mr. Durst. Forgetting about the relationship between Dr. Cooperman and Kathy Durst, how is it that the rotation, the service, was supposed to find out that Kathy Durst was not going to be there?
Whatever the relationship was between Kathy Durst and Dr. Cook, that was what they wanted her to do.
So, Mr. Durst, then the inference from that is that Dr. Cook or Dr. Cooperman was supposed to contact the rotation and tell them Kathy was sick. You agree that is the inference you are suggesting?
I don't agree with anything you were saying. Whatever the relationship between Kathy Durst and Dr. Cook had, that was what Kathy Durst was supposed to do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming back on Monday, another long weekend. We have that variant out there. Got to be so careful. Wear your masks. If you're not vaccinated, please be vaccinated right away. Drive carefully. I've noticed people are driving crazy out there. Have you noticed it? Drive defensively. Be careful. We really care about you and want you to be well. Want to see you on Monday. So do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. Juror number 2, I'll give you an update if you want to hang out a little bit longer. And thank you. We'll see you on Monday.
Please come back next week.